Hello and welcome to COS Today, as we bring you Roundtable. The Roundtable segment is presented here every fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. We'll be focusing on education and discussion of the topics and challenges we all face as we use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Join us now as we bring you COS Today's Roundtable with our MC, John Ackerman.
Welcome to Convention of States Today Roundtable. I'm your host, John Ackerman, and our topic is focusing on the Department of Education, the federal Department of Education, with a particular view towards closing it. Now, back in August and September, we did a deep dive into the powers the Constitution gives to the federal government. Can't repeat all of that now, so I'll just point out that nowhere in the Constitution is the federal government given the responsibility to control education in the United States. Yet, we have a federal Department of Education, which last year, get this, last year spent $268 billion. That ranks the United States as number one in the world in per student spending, and yet we rank 40th in the world in student performance. I would say we're not getting much bang for the buck. And so I want to go right to our regular COS Today host. Nope, I want to go right to the state director for COS for Indiana, Dale Tipton, and ask him to talk to us about why the Department of Education was created in the first place. Dale, take it away.
Okay, John, thank you. It's very interesting. I learned a lot here that I had never really considered, but it kind of runs like this. Although the Department of Education is a relative newcomer among cabinet level agencies, its origin goes back to 1867 when President Andrew Johnson signed legislation creating the first Department of Education. Its main purpose was to collect information and statistics about the nation's schools. However, due to concern that the department would exercise too much control over local schools, the new department was demoted to the Office of Education in 1868. Now, over the years, the office remained relatively small, operating under different titles and housed in various agencies, including the U.S. Department of the Interior and the former U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, which is now Health and Human Services. So beginning in the 1950s, political and social changes resulted in expanded federal funding for education. The successful launch of the Soviet Union's Sputnik in 1957 spurred nationwide concern that led to increased aid for science and education programs. The 1960s saw even more expansion of federal education funding. President Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty called for the creation of many programs to improve education for poor students at all levels, early childhood through post-secondary. Now, this expansion continued in the 1970s with national efforts to help racial minorities, women, people with disabilities, and non-English speaking students to gain equal access to education. In October 1979, Congress passed the Department of Education Organization Act, which was Public Law 96-88, and it was created by combining offices from several federal agencies, and the department began operations in May of 1980. So, since John brought up the topic of money, in the 1860s, a budget of $15,000 and 4 employees handled education fact-finding. By 1965, The Office of Education had more than 2,100 employees and a budget of $1.5 billion. And as of mid 2010, the department had up to 4,300 employees and a budget of $60 billion. And so I think, John, you talked about 300 billion or so today. So since 2010, that's just continued to spiral out of control. So that's the basics of the department's history.
So that's why it was created. Okay. By the way, if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, you can enter any comments or questions that you have in that chat box. And Ken Kashuba over there on the upper, just above me on the screen, Ken's keeping an eye on that, and he'll bring as many relevant comments and questions as he can to the screen. Now, I almost went out of order here. Now I want to go to the other Dale, Dale Parrish, who's the regular Monday night COS Today host. Dale, talk to us about the purpose and mission of the Department of Education, why it exists, what it's supposed to be doing.
Sure will, John. I'll only need about 40 minutes, so I'll go as quickly as I can here. So, no,
I'll take a break. I'll see you after a while.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Let's talk about, first of all, the purpose of the Department of Education. And the purpose is to coordinate federal assistance to education, to enforce federal education laws, collect and analyze education-related data, and to overall improve the nation's education system. Now, the mission, which is a little different, but the mission of the DOE is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. Doesn't that sound great? That's a great mission statement, isn't it?
Sounds great. How are we doing?
Okay.
Well, 40th in the world.
I'll get to that pretty soon here.
Yeah.
There's 6 key responsibilities of the DOE. Number 1 is to distribute federal funds. That's very important, right? Setting educational policies, promoting equal access. I think that's something that the other Dale mentioned. Research and data collection, supporting innovation and improvement, and overseeing special programs. So while education policy is primarily handled by state and local governments, the Department of Education provides federal leadership, funding, and oversight to help maintain educational standards nationwide. And federal funding and oversight, that's kind of the part of the problem here, I believe. But anyway, that's basically the purpose and mission of the Department of Education. Now, let's talk about some of the things that have been happening as far as assessment of how we've been doing. Okay, in the area of math and reading, I've got some results here for this pertains to the 4th, 8th, and 12th grades in the United States. And I won't go through all the details here, but basically since 2022, significant declines in 4th and 8th grade math scores. And much of that can be attributed to the COVID situation that we had to go through. As far as reading, since 2019, the decline has been significant, particularly in lower performing students. So while there were some gains in the early 2000s, this all started reversing about 2015 and has since been declining. Let's talk about high school graduation rates. I was surprised. As of 2003, about 74% of students graduated from high school. I didn't realize it was that high. And in 2019, we reached an all-time high of 86% of students graduated.
Wow.
But since 2021, that has held steady and with somewhat of a decline in high school graduations. So, however, while more students are earning diplomas, there is a realistic concern that many graduates are not college or career ready. And I think that's been something that we've been aware of for some time. As far as college readiness, which, it depends on the SAT scores, ACT scores, they've declined with fewer students meeting college readiness. More students are attending college, but college completion rates remain low. Only about 60% graduate within 6 years. And many incoming college students require some medial coursework, suggesting, obviously, gaps in high school preparation. Mm-hmm. So when you get into race here, the achievement gaps, white and Asian students outperform, as usual, Black, Hispanic, and low-income students. And basically, this is a lot of this is contributed to the COVID-19 impact. But basically, the conclusion here is that while there might have been some early gains in the early 2000s, 2000 to 2010, the gains have slowly worsened since then. So performance-wise, we're not doing as good as we were before. Now let's talk about cost. This is always a favorite topic for a lot of people. As far as the cost of students in primarily public schools in K through 12, okay, the United States spends the most per student. We spend on average between $14,000 to $16,000 per student. And just to give you an idea, the top four would be Germany at $12,000, the United Kingdom at $11,000, and Japan at $10,000. So ours is $14,000 to $16,000 per student. As far as higher education, again, the United States spends the most per college student in the world. We average in the range of $30,000 to $35,000 per year per student. In the top four, Canada's at $22,000, United Kingdom at $20,000, and Germany at $18,000. So we're spending $30,000 to $35,000 per student in college.
Wow.
So what's the reasons for these high costs? And this is very interesting. Higher teacher salaries, expensive administration and bureaucracy. Does that ring a bell? High cost for special education programs, greater use of technology and facilities, and higher college tuition and student loan expenses.
Wow.
Bottom line, the United States is one of the biggest spenders on education per student, but the return on investment in terms of academic performance is not as strong as in other high-performing countries. So that's what I have for you, John.
That's putting it mildly, not as strong. Wow.
Yeah.
Here we are spending more per student than any other country in the world by a long shot. and getting terrible results. What was it Einstein said about the definition of insanity? Let's keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And clearly something has to change. Something has to change. Well, in light of all that good news, Dale, thank you very much for all that bright, happy, good news. I want to turn to Brett Sturley. Brett is joining us from Missouri, where he's the COS state director. And Brett, could you talk to our audience for a few minutes on the good things that the Department of Education is supposed to be doing for the people of the United States, the taxpayers, the ones who are footing the bill? Okay, Brett, your turn.
Absolutely. If I could ask one quick question of Dale real fast. I mean, those were fascinating statistics, and another quote kind of comes to mind is Ronald Reagan mentioned that there seems to be a little bit of loss in overhead from the way from in our federal spending. But when you mentioned the graduation rates had gone up and kind of stabilized, it would seem in your research, is it your opinion that you think that graduation rates have gone up or have stabilized this higher rate just simply because schools are just shoving students through the system that are not prepared for adulthood?
I think that could be a logical conclusion, but or a logical observation, because my research did point out that while more people are getting diplomas, they're not as prepared for college or career opportunities. So there's something there's something going on there that doesn't match up. Yes.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So, well, I'll getting to my topic here. This was one thing, and thank you, John. And when I first saw this, I was kicking myself that I got behind emails just a little bit, and looking at all the other topics were discussed. All the other topics were taken already, and I thought, man, what a terrible topic this is. What good does the Department of Education do for the people? And I thought this is really going to be hard to come up with some examples to have any kind of good news or to be able to answer that question. And then after I kind of thought about it for a little while, it's like really came to what I think might have been the easiest topic to get. So first, we've heard the background of the Department of Education, why it was created back in 1978, and how it's failing in its mission for sure. The DOE budget, Department of Education budget, back in 1980, its first year, the appropriated budget was $14 billion. And as Dale, I believe, had pointed out, and we're $268 billion here this year. And, test scores have been in reading, math, and science have been flat, really since the early 70s, but definitely since the Department of Education came into being. And so to lend a little bit more validity and back up to Dale Parrish's statistics, we're not getting more bang for our buck. It has just been terrible. And so in looking at some of these surveys are all over the place. I just want to throw out a couple statistics. This is according to the National Center on Educational Statistics. The U.S. ranks, they showed 13th in reading literacy. I kind of find that difficult to believe, but 56th in math proficiency. This is out of 80 countries, the 80 OECD countries, developed countries, and 26th in science literacy. I know specifically when I look at my school district, about 34% of graduating seniors are graduating here in Greene County, Missouri, proficient at grade level in mathematics. I think it's 42% in reading. So they're really doing a terrible job, has been pointed out here, as far as preparing students to be productive adults. But so I guess what's my question? What's the answer to my question? What good does the Department of Education do for the American people? I think it does several things that are really, really good. One, it demonstrates that the federal government bureaucracy contributes little, if anything, to the actual education of American students. And actually, the federal bureaucracy is probably about the worst possible way that we can educate our students or educate our kids and prepare them to be productive adults. I think it shows that there's a pile of taxpayer money that can be dozed back to fund the Doge dividend. I think so. There's ample waste and fraud and abuse in the system. It also, as John pointed out, it proves that Thomas Jefferson was right, that the federal government has absolutely no role in education unless a constitutional amendment is passed permitting that. So that puts the onus on us to demand that if we want that, but I don't think that we do. And I think that one of the other good things that it does is it proves that we the people can help fix this issue if we step up to be self-governing citizens. This education is a state and local matter, and I really think that the exposure of all the waste, fraud, and abuse across the federal government system, specifically when it comes to the Department of Education, is because that deals with our kids and that deals with our future. And if we can't properly educate our future students, our future leaders of America, we're going to be in quite a pickle, and even more than we are so right now. So I think the good thing that it does is it shows basically everything not to do to actually benefit the American education system. So we can check all those things right off our list and go with some real reforms and answer this call to action that it's our duty to step up and answer. So that's my answer. Hopefully that's a decent answer.
I say that's a great answer because I've been harassing Brett for the last few days because he had that topic and I wondered where in the world he was going to go with it. And it was not so different than I expected. So well done. I would have to agree with you. So my question number 4 is what harm does the Department of Education do? And I will tell you 2 things that is very harmful. The Department of Education is a money laundering operation for the Democratic Party. That's what it is. And it is in the business of maintaining control of the college loan process. And the federal government owns most of those loans. There's a little bit of private sector work in there and some management, but largely the government manages the college loans. And it's interesting because when I first joined COS, I was listening to chatter about how our Convention of States movement, under the auspices or under the authority of Article 5, with the pillar that suggests that we could, rein in overreaching government, that the Department of Education, in closing that, or an amendment that would close it, kind of falls under that pillar. So I was looking at the Department of Education website one day because that sounded like a really big deal to me when I first heard that, closing it. And basically the logos that were on that webpage, immediately I knew that it was about money because the loans and the logos for all these lending kind of organizations that the government is managing were all on there. In addition to that, this sounds kind of anecdotal, but there were huge federal buildings that were presumably the Department of Education. Now that webpage has changed since then. It looks a little more education, student oriented, but just not long ago, a few years ago when I looked, it's big giant buildings. And I thought, what in the world does the Department of Education do for me anyway? And what do they need all those buildings and windows for? As silly as that sounds, there's a salary for every one of those windows and retirement. And I still could never really understand what it did for me. So that's because it's really doing nothing for me or you. And the feds are in control of it. That's all there is to it. Any, schooling that is happening is clearly being managed at the local level anyway, because I do not see in any of my research really how that trickles down into like the local, to my community, and anything that the Department of Education does, except for the loans. And really padding the pockets of the people that are in the unions, in the teachers unions. So to get more specific, the Department of Education is designed to provide material and political benefits to teachers unions, not to improve student outcomes. And it's fulfilling that purpose just very, very well. That's why it was created. I got some of this information from the Heritage Foundation. They're not serving the needs of students, white or minority, despite the fact that they probably, as Dale may have said, that is part of their job. It's pork barrel politics, plain and simple. Students' test scores have not risen in the last 42 years. There are gaps in achievement between different racial and income groups. Those have not closed since the Department of Education has been in existence. Education attainment has risen, but it looks like they're degrading the standards for completing high school, which I think gets to what Dale and had discussed. They are lowering standards. I don't think anybody questions that. In fact, I was in a conversation literally yesterday with a college professor who does some communications, and I was seeking his advice for some comms work for COS, and he's a volunteer. And he said every year, his students get less and less capable. He wasn't even that nice the way he said it. So less and less every year he sees it. The teachers, naturally, they enjoy getting paid while they're on breaks. There's a lot of perks with these unions. There's a lot of new programs, billions of dollars into programs like the 21st Century Community Learning Centers, which is one example. It expands services provided to schools to include doctors, nurses, dentists, social workers, and psychologists. So then they've got this a new, sort of batch of professionals that are sort of part of the union, and they get more and more money to bring those types of people into the educational, effort. Here's a sad thing, and I did see this comment in the comment section here while I was listening. Funding for career and technical education has fallen by 50% between 1980 and 2019. So 50% after adjusting for inflation, it dropped from 2.54 billion to 1.27 billion. That's a shame. That is unacceptable. That is not serving students. Not all students are going to go to college, nor are they capable of it, or do they want to. I may have one of my children here may not want to go, and I would certainly want there to be technical schools. Gosh, I can't imagine a better way to invest in students than to try and guide them into their next role so that they're successful and they can raise their families. So I think that's pathetic. The unions prefer formula-funded programs that pour money into districts' general coffers over grant-based programs that would obligate them to serve certain communities. The crazy thing about all of this is a ton of money goes to the Department of Education and to teachers' unions, and those teachers' unions are backing Democrat candidates, like hugely. Like I have a chart in front of me. The you've heard of NEA. The NEA is one of these groups. There are several big educational union groups. $33 million to Democrat candidates and like zero to conservative groups. That was between 2023 and 2024. That's new data. The American Federation of Teachers, looks like these top two groups kind of compete with each other. $8 million to Democrat candidates. So this is that's a money laundering organization. That's what it is. It's the same thing as like DEI. That's money laundering too, honestly. And this is in our education. And this is like, what better resource do you have than American youth? And this is what they get. It needs to go. I want to see it closed. I'm going to move real quickly. I think I'm probably running out of time, but this notion that the Department of Education is controlling funding, like for school loans, that happened. If you remember, I had to jog my memory. That was part of the Affordable Care Act in 2010 that Barack Obama put in the Affordable Care Act. So that banks would no longer underwrite student loans and the federal government was just lend directly to students. Of course, that resulted in rising college costs and a declining return on investment, ballooning student loan debt, costing taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. Obama proclaimed that by doing it, he would cut out the middleman, which apparently was the private sector. And all it did was result in a disaster, really. It didn't save money. Loans defaults increased. And colleges, of course, as we would expect as conservative thinkers, that colleges accelerated the increases in tuitions and fees, and student debt skyrocketed. All these things were all Obama's grand idea, and President Biden doubled down. And then, of course, he was paying off student debt, which was a horrific offense against people who had already paid their loans off or were paying in real time. Really, I think this goes back to what we at Convention of States largely believes, like, get your hands off. Big government, get your hands off our business. The private sector is better off doing it themselves. I'm a homeschooler. Trust me, I do it better myself. I just do. Yeah, that's the story. I did have a chart, but I'm not sure that, Dale, if you got a chance to, maybe you didn't even see it. It's okay. The chart basically shows from 1970, 200% increase in expenditure up until 2012, but the schools that was tuition rates, I guess, and scores remain just totally flat relative to this tremendous increase in expenditure. So this is a bad idea. It needs to go. Convention of States has been right on this for years. Doge is right. I'm happy to see it go.
Diana, we have one comment to support you with that.
Diana,
One?
You're nailing it.
Yeah,
Nailing it. Thank you, David.
Yeah. Okay, Dale Tipton.
Yeah, just one comment. I have a daughter currently who's a teacher. And so whenever you want to get to where the rubber hits the road, where you've got a teacher in a classroom, these folks are dipping into their own pocket for school supplies. Or else parents are getting lists, bring a box of Kleenexes for Johnny, bring, all this stuff. And with all this money that's floating around out there for education, it's fairly evident that it is not reaching down to the kids at all, because there's some serious shortages of just basic supplies that they all should have access to.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah, Dale Parrish.
Yeah, John, where did I hear? Didn't I hear that there are more administrators than students? Did you all hear that too? In our schools, that the number of administrators. Pardon me?
I've heard that for certain school districts, but I don't.
Maybe it's for certain
ones.
School districts, but boy, there's something wrong there. There's something wrong there. I think that's union.
Like the man said, follow the money, see who's getting paid off, and you'll find out where the corruption is. Ken, did you have something else?
I was just going to vouch for that, Dale. I worked before getting out of the career. I worked for a long time visiting public schools as a book supplier to the librarians and the libraries. And I can tell you firsthand, a majority of those schools were all top heavy. Way too many administrators, not too many chiefs, not enough Indians.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll just throw a couple 2 cents in here because we're looking at I think it's here in Springfield, Missouri School District. These are the last numbers I had seen. We're looking at a $15 million shortfall in our next year's budget. And so they went through and let go some staff. The last numbers I saw is about 85% of that staff were actually involved in direct student contact, either with counselors or teachers, something directly with the educational environment. And I think it was only like 12 to 15% were involved in administration. So the rot is in the bureaucracy, period, no matter what level it is. But that's why we have to be eternally vigilant, and we have to be involved, and we have to go to these school board meetings, and we have to push back and expose this exactly the way we have to be our own Doge agency in our local school districts and our local communities to expose this and just watch the cockroaches scatter, because sunlight is the best disinfectant. And maybe one of these days we can talk. I actually have kind of an idea of how in the collegiate area that colleges would have to underwrite student loans. So then they have skin in the game to make sure that they actually provide a useful education, a degree that's not underwater basket weaving or lesbian dance theory or something like that. Is actually a marketable skill to where otherwise the school does not get paid, and that's funded through their endowments. But
great,
totally different subject.
Great. Okay, Diana.
Tomorrow, I'm going to the State House, our Ohio State House, to accompany a group who has been promoting school choice. And I'm not sure, Missouri might be the state that has it. Indiana might too. Ohio does not have school choice as of yet. How that would work the legislation hasn't been filed yet for Ohio. It's died before in other GAs, but they are reintroducing it. It would be the money basically follows the child. So the state money follows the child. The obviously property taxes are taken, and that stays in every district when they collect. But the state money follows the child, and it would promote competition. And I can't think of a better way. Like even these laws against DEI and the things and the ideologies that we hate to see in our schools that we know are bad for our kids. That is one way, instead of passing laws against that, because the definitions change. But if you're introducing competition among these schools, some of that fat that they've got, if they're top heavy, they might have to be kind of naturally be forced into fixing those things. I mean, we get rid of the Department of Education, first, well, whatever order it comes in, the combination of introducing like competition to our school systems. I say, I'm not sending my kid to that school because I know what you're doing there. And I know they're not doing it over here because I'm listening. That's a big deal. And that would be both of these things would be so, so healthy for our schools and for our students. I really, really hope we can get that done. I don't even have time to be going to the State House for anything other than Convention of States, frankly. But I feel compelled, because if we don't educate our students and we don't do a good job raising good Americans who are capable, whether they go to college or not, they need to be capable of living and having some confidence in themselves. What do we have? We've got nothing. We have, maybe right now for the moment in Washington, D.C., things might be going our way. If we don't educate these kids, we will have nothing later.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Dale Parrish, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Diana mentioned something. Am I correct, Diana, that they're talking in Ohio about these education accounts? I can't think of the total abbreviation. What is it? Education.
I don't remember the name of the account specifically, but they would create an account. Somebody like me would get that money. And can use that for books, or because I don't get any money. I don't get any break because I'm homeschooling. So that account, I would be able to spend it on music lessons or sports or, tutoring, right, which we do pay for.
I thought that was a pretty good idea. Actually, it starts, if I understand this right, it starts from the very beginning, from kindergarten, and for each student, and tax money or whatever money would normally come to that school, I guess, for that student would go into their education account, and then the parents would have the right to use that money however they wanted.
Yeah, for a private school. If they went to a different public school, I'm not sure if there would be an account or not. I can look into that. We can talk about it next time we cover the topic. But I can tell you this is how ridiculous I have become. It's not ridiculous. It's absolutely imperative. I don't want to take money from anybody. I would prefer that I get like a tax deferment or some kind of break in my taxes, because as soon as I take money, I feel like I'm setting myself up for being controlled, and I don't want to be controlled. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that I'm totally for school choice, but I do worry about somebody saying, well, we gave you that money, so you need to do this. And that
Right.
makes me nervous, because that's what homeschoolers are really skittish. That other people have not said that. That's just me. But my husband says, of course, well, you take the money, because I was like, I don't need their money. And he's like, no, you take the money. We use it for tutoring. We use it for books. We do spend money on homeschooling. It is expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I'll learn more about it, Dale. I'm going to be at the hearing tomorrow, apparently. So
That's awesome. Diane, I
good.
was just
Dale
going to throw
Tipton,
something
you
in
had
here.
your hand up.
Oh yeah, I was just going to throw something here real quick, Diana. You're exactly right. And Missouri is doing some of that. I think we have education savings accounts.
That's what it was.
What
Yeah.
we call, and so that's what we call them here. But the one thing that addresses the homeschoolers, the homeschool concerns here in Missouri last legislative session, the exact same thing that you're talking about there. So there was actually a new section defined called family-paced education. And that was a separate definition that would allow home money, state tax money, to go to homeschooling with no strings attached whatsoever. It's a block grant to the family, and so that is being addressed. And so we have an open enrollment bill that we're discussing here right now, and that's where this is going. I 100% agree with you.
Open enrollment.
Competition is what needed.
Yeah.
Open enrollment
Open
what's
enrollment.
needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm glad. Pave the way. Bring it on.
Yeah. Dale Tipton, did you have another comment?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say we've got our guns leveled at the Department of Education, but if you want to look at the United States Postal Service and their efficiency, or the Department of Veterans Affairs, how our veterans get access to medical care, or how the college loans are being handled, virtually everything that is handled by the federal government is mishandled. Right. And so, the Department of Transportation, when's the last time you saw a highway get built in the budget that they originally outlined? I mean, these things go over. Same thing with the military on a new airplane or whatever. It starts out at like $30 million a plane. It may end up being $60 million a plane, and so it's all over the place. And it's, Diana's point about, a federal money laundering scheme. That is exactly what's going on. And I think as you see the developments coming out of the White House now with DOGE, the average American is starting to see what we've all known here for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, my internet failed me somewhere between Brett and Diana. So Ken, I have a question for you. I don't know if you had a chance to talk about that QR code up in the corner. Did you talk about that while I was away?
I have not, but I'll give it a quick go. That yeah, there's it. Yeah, there it is. That QR code there is a way that you can support our COS today. It is a platform that will basically allow you to get involved with other supporters who would like to obtain some of the free material that we supply there, and that's that includes many of our contributors' videos, our educational connections, and a lot of other things that we've put on there for people that want to support. Now, if you're on YouTube and you're seeing the subscribe button below, we want you to hit that too. But this is different. It's a support system, basically a platform. It's free. Your name and an email will get you hooked up with other people that want to support us, and that's all we're looking for with that QR code. So click it and help support the COS Today programming.
That's pretty good. Thanks, Ken. Well, we do want to take a short break here. We've got a video that we want to take a look at. It's called Dave's Daily Dose.
Well, John, we're supposed to have a video called Dave's Daily Dose, but I forgot to load it. So we don't have that, John. I'm sorry.
Well, all kinds of things are going well tonight, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, then let's just go to our final panel member, and I'm going to run right back to Ken and ask Ken this question. Talk about this. Why would closing the DOE be a good thing to do?
Well, one of the things about going last is obviously, I think a lot has been covered as to why it would be good to close it. I think it's quite obvious at this point that the money laundering and all the stuff that goes behind that is certainly just one of the I mean, all the reasons have pretty much have been laid out there. But what I want to do is talk a little bit more. I want to focus in on a few things that point out examples as to why it would be good to close the DOE and what it would do for our education system. By giving you a couple of examples. Now, obviously, the Department of Education has initiated federally mandated education programs, things that are designed more for social and feelings and things that certainly don't have anything to do with the education that I got when I was younger. And it all points to some of the things that we've talked about here as far as the graduation rate. Let's face it, basically what they have put into place in order to collect the money from the school districts has basically lowered the bar. It's dumbed down our students. And this is one of the main reasons that we are what I think President Trump mentioned the other day, we're 40th, I think. And our education system is failing us. So there's a couple of examples I want to give. One of those is an education program called the Common Core. Now, this was instituted a number of years ago. And rather than encompassing all of education, it targeted only two subject areas, math and English language arts. And it had a very narrow focus. And it was worsened by policies requiring a big standardized test that focused on only those standards. History, science, the arts, and other subject areas were totally ignored by both these standards. And the standards linked tests tying federal funds to the schools and instituting programs like these that has monetized the education system. It's resulted in teaching what to learn instead of how to learn. So by returning education to the states and local government, we not only can promote what's best for each school district, but allow things like school choice to better serve our students and gives parents the power and the control of their own children's education. So it seems simple, but in all the noise of every next new thing in education, education trends, we've lost the ability to think for ourselves, to reason logically, and to persuasively maintain a love of learning. So standard U.S. public education is referred to as the traditional model. And this is an example of what has come about since COVID. And actually, the actual model has been around since the Greeks, but it's called a classical education. And we've seen an increase in popularity of the classical education model, which is shaping school choice. And it's seen a resurgence since COVID in private, religious, and chartered learning institutions. So under the classical education model, 3 pillars of learning, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, are applied holistically to all subjects with the goal of obtaining wisdom, not just understanding, according to the classical, and that's according to the Classical Academy School here in Indianapolis. Now, by contrast, in a traditional public education setting, subjects are compartmentalized, and students engage in syllabus-led courses and project-based activities based with the goal of developing foundational skills through the accumulation of facts and information according to the official Common Core website. So to give you an example of how getting rid of the Department of Education would bring good, the Classical Academy provided an example of a three-pillar concept in a lesson about the War of 1812, where students are first assigned to learn the facts, which is the grammar part of that event, including names, dates, and places that they apply, and what they've learned to answer questions about why the war started, how the war ended, and why it ended. That's the logic part. Now, at the rhetoric stage, students would begin to integrate that grammar and logic, seeing where else in history or life we see similar patterns or outcomes, and what those might mean for our present and everyday life. So the same topic in a traditional classroom might also involve memorizing the key facts of the War of 1812, followed by an in-class assignment completed most of the time on a laptop or tablet, either individually or in small groups. In that system, the emphasis is on demonstrating knowledge retained from the lesson specific to the topic, but not necessarily how it relates to other events, past or present. It seems simple based on all the noise of every next new thing in education trends. We have lost the ability to think for ourselves, as I've mentioned before, and to maintain that love of learning. So as we look to bring on and develop to shape a new culture and bring new innovative work to mankind, bottom line is that will come from eliminating federal control over our education and returning it to the power and scope of education back to the local levels who know their students best. I spent a few years serving the libraries of public schools, as I mentioned earlier. And what I learned from many visits was the administration was more interested in hanging a shiny new banner at the school entrance than what was needed to better educate. And that was tied to the money. The feds were dangling. I also mentioned that through the years of visiting many public schools, I also attended many conferences, and the heavy-handedness of the Democratic Party's basically influence over the teachers was so evident and so heavy that the teachers, even if they disagreed, felt it was necessary that they had to go along with the democratic rule of time. And it was so obvious that it was just one of those things that, as a vendor attending these conferences, I basically had to keep my mouth shut, because if I didn't, I wouldn't sell any books to their libraries either. But it's just the way they are. And I had so many librarians tell me, you know what, I my budget for putting books in the library has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, and yet the principal, all he wants is to hang that banner up, and in order to get that banner up, he had to take the money.
Once again, follow the money. Wow. Well, we'll see what happens. The president has stated that his goal is to close the federal Department of Education. That, of course, would take an act of Congress because Congress created the department. But under the leadership, who's the new education secretary, Linda McMahon?
Right.
It is going to shrink. The Department of Education is going to shrink. And here's something I'm saying kind of tongue in cheek. When the federal mandate to get rid of DEI hits public schools and colleges that rely on federal money, there's going to be a lot of unemployed people who are going to help to fill the help wanted jobs, the labor shortage that's been going on in this country ever since COVID. When people decided to leave the workforce, the people who have jobs are going to find jobs in the private sector and get off of the government dole. That's my prediction, but who knows? Like I said a minute ago, we'll just see what happens. Well, friends, thanks to all 5 of you for helping out with this tonight and for carrying on in my absence. And to our listening audience, I want to say that this brings us to an end of this month's Roundtable. Before we close it out, I want to give you our email address. If you have any questions at all about Convention of States, please email them to us at that address right there, raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. That's raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. I want to invite you to tune in next Monday, March 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern for our next Convention of States Today, where we're going to look at the Sovereign Wealth Fund and COS basics, and we certainly hope Dave's Daily Dose. and the one following that will be on March the 10th, same time, 7 o'clock Eastern, and we're going to look at understanding tariffs and another COS basics and another Dave's Daily Dose. Well, the next Convention of States Today Roundtable will be on the fourth Monday of March. That'll be March the 24th, exactly a month from now at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. And I want to show you, I hope, episode number 4 of COS Basics. It's called Be Kind. John Ackerman for Convention of States, Indiana. This is the 4th video in the series on COS Basics. We've been talking about the core values of Convention of States, and I've already talked about the first 3, which are preserve constitutional originalism, foster responsible self-governance, and cultivate servant leaders. And now, number 4, be kind. Just be kind. Here at Convention of States, we believe in the Golden Rule. Do unto others what you would have them do unto you. Many world religions have what's known as the Silver Rule. Do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you. And, that's okay. But I like the positive spin on the Golden Rule, the rule that Jesus gave us. Do the good things to others that you want them to do to you. Here in Convention of States, we treat others the way we want to be treated. Now, that's a rather unusual value these days in America and in the world. We're used to hearing in the news of political maneuvering, dirty tricks, dog eat dog, manipulation, getting people to do things the way you want them done, and mistreating people in order to achieve your own desired ends. But here in Convention of States, we seek to have positive interactions with others, while at the same time we strive to be professional, respectful, and speak the truth boldly and with love. I was in a youth ministry one time where we had one rule. The only rule was to treat everyone as a child of God. The subtext of that rule was, no one has the right to treat anyone else as if they do not matter. Treat every person as a child of God. And here in COS, we boil it down to 2 words. Be kind. And here to close us out is Marengo Mike with a message.
Marengo Mike here with a reminder that our work to raise the bar on making our federal government accountable to the people is only halfway done. We need to grow our grassroots army of citizens every day to fulfill the vision of our forefathers and keep our land free and prosperous. So, if you have never signed the petition to show your support, use that QR code and do that now. While you're there, why not kick it up a notch and volunteer for many of the positions available where your talents can make a difference as we march into a new year. Thank you, and God bless.